Ukraine has been in a defensive war for nearly 4 years, but how did it all begin? Viktor Yanukovych rejected a trade deal that was set forth from the European Union, opting to strengthen ties with Russia instead. Thousands of people protested in Maidan Square in the Ukrainian capital of Kiev, seeing as it was going to damage their economy astronomically. The Ukrainian police cracked down on these protests, leaving nearly 75 Ukrainians dead by February of 2014. Viktor Yanukovych was later removed from power after a vote from politicians in Ukraine requested an election. That is when Petro Poroshenko was elected to power in late May of 2014, where he still remains in power to this day. Petro Poroshenko severed ties with the Russian Federation. This led the region of Crimea into protest, which set forth a vote to leave Ukraine. The vote had a turnout of 89.4% of citizens opting to be absorbed into the Russian Federation. This led Russia to annex Crimea in mid-March of 2014. Rebels backed by the Russian Federation then sieged political buildings of 6 major eastern Ukrainian cities. Russia later absorbed these rebels into their military and attempted an annexation of eastern Ukraine. Ukraine attempted a defense using its own forces, but was unsuccessful in taking back their territory. During the conflict, Malaysia Flight 17 were shot down by an unmarked missile. This will be important later in the presentation. I have gathered nearly 50 articles pertaining to this topic, as it is a very large issue happening in Eastern Europe, but I have managed to filter it down to a few of the most important current events that have been reported on. Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 was a scheduled passenger flight from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur that was shot down on the 17th of July 2014 while flying over eastern Ukraine. Contact with the aircraft, a Boeing 777-200ER, was lost when it was about 50 kilometers away from the Ukraine-Russia border, and wreckage of the aircraft fell near Habrov in the Donetsk Oblast, Ukraine, 40 kilometers away from the border. September 17th. Proof surfaces that it was Ukraine that shot down Malaysian Airlines Flight MH17. There's been a lot of controversy over Flight MH17 being shot down, as it was a civilian aircraft. Accusations have been being thrown around between Russia and Ukraine over who launched the missile to shoot it down. Since the missile's serial number was just released weeks before today, the Russian government found files on the missile. The document stated that it had been transported to Ukraine during the Soviet era and was never brought back. This is apparently proof that Ukraine shot the rocket, although no further actions were taken. September 25th, 2018. The United States Coast Guard sent 2 fully armed cutters, which are light attack boats, to the Ukrainian Navy. This action was taken to assist the Ukrainian Navy in the naval fight against the Russian Federation, as Ukraine has a massively underpowered navy. Since the revolution in 2013 in Ukraine, the United States and many other countries, such as Israel, Germany, and Romania, have been assisting Ukraine in its fight against Russia. September 20th, 2018, Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko steps up the naval security of the Black Sea. This was after reports of the Russian equivalent to the American Coast Guard inspecting so-called suspicious ships that were going into Ukraine. President Poroshenko wants to blockade the Russian naval vessels from entering Ukraine's territorial waters. This is important because this and the event before it led to 3 Ukrainian naval ships being captured and their crews taken hostage a few days ago from the presentation today. The United States is sending warships to assist Ukraine in its fight against Russia. We will now go over the guiding questions. Question 1. How has our ability to access the news on a 24-hour basis affect how we perceive current events topics. Since we can get news all the time now, it may increase our knowledge towards a certain issue since you can find information about it everywhere all the time, making your perception a more of an honest opinion. This is true as long as your news source is mostly unbiased facts and you have multiple news sources. Question 2. How has your topic evolved over the course of a month and a half? The war in Ukraine has slowly evolved, making a month's worth of changes not very noticeable, although it has been losing support from the American media outlets as they aren't showing many articles or stories about it anymore. It's mostly in Eastern Europe. It seems to just be a constant stream of debates and skirmishes around the Ukrainian border with the Russian Federation. This was mostly true until recently, when a few weeks ago, the United States started pushing their way into the conflict, although it is unknown to me why the United States is doing this. You can see that the United States is pushing their way into this conflict from the countless times that they have reinforced the Ukrainians and sent them supplies such as guns, ammunition, and ships. I hope you enjoyed the video presentation. I have made a website that describes all of the news stories and more at https://23txnicholas.wixsite.com/yeet. It took me nearly 35 hours over 2 weeks to produce this piece of content, and if you would like to see more, you can subscribe at youtube.com/sportshot. Well, that was it for Sportshot News Network.